This morning, I will introduce you to Christine Louveau. We have followed the same training with Claude Imbert, and I would like to send her our love this morning. Obviously, we both think of her dearly. And now let me introduce you to Christine. Christine, welcome. You will give us a presentation about your work and your training sessions, and I will really want to introduce you with all my heart to Christine, who is a passionate person and who knows how to accompany people with her presence. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. This morning, I would like to invite you on an adventure, a beautiful adventure, the adventure of life. And in line with what Nicole said about birth and coming into the world, first of all, let me show you a movie about the very early stages of life and everything that happens in the womb. It's a movie by Leonard Nilsson, and the advantage of it is that it was filmed from within the womb, and you will see extraordinary things during this film. And then I will give you a few comments when we start the conference. So I wish you a good film, and I'll be with you right after. So, yesterday evening we watched another movie which was called No Solar, and it was about those people who were ready to go into incarnation. And now we have heard about the womb life and incarnation. Now there are 2 or 3 things I wanted to mention about this film, because I believe that there are 2 or 3 comments which I believe are not right. But of course we are learning on a continuous basis. First of all, ovulation. There are several potential ovulations and not just one, which can explain the presence of twins, which I will talk about a bit later. The second point I wanted to mention is this story of this sperm that comes in, and he is presented as the one who vanquishes, as if there was this notion of competition between this sperm and the thousands of other sperms around. And today we know, and this is something that I've also seen in Sophro-analysis, there is no such thing as competition, but only cooperation in the womb. Because competition is today's society, who's going to be first and crush the others. But at the end of the day, if you look at this process of the creation of life, going towards the ovum, which is very often represented as something very luminous in the sessions. Well, the sperm is accompanied by a lot of friends who are here to help him and then go away, and it makes a big difference, doesn't it? Another important point, according to me, is this notion of consciousness. Consciousness is present from the very early stages of life, even before the creation of the cell. It's not when sensory organs are created that the fetus starts interacting with its environment. It's from the very, very beginning. And we'll talk about this again together. Anyway, this film is still a magnificent film and allows us to better understand the miracle of life. Now, let me start this conference with something I believe is very important. It's the power of the spirit. Probably you've heard about because this is something that we hear about more and more today, you must have heard about quantum physics. Quantum physics tells us that at the end of the day, it's the spirit that creates matter. At the end of the day, at one point in time, we select one probability among so many others. And this is the probability that's going to manifest itself. It's very important to remember that the spirit creates matter. Why? Well, because what we're going to see today is the adventure of the spirit indeed. So how does the spirit manifest itself? Consciousness actually manifests itself with thoughts. We have over 60,000 thoughts a day. If you wanted to measure brain waves, well, you would see that we have thousands of thoughts every day, but you're only aware of 2 to 5% of the thoughts you have, which means that at the end of the day, you are thought. Your thoughts actually animate you in a way. And so what's interesting is for us to become aware of these thoughts and all the underlying mechanisms so that you can freely decide for yourself about your life again. So we are zooming in from the spirit to thoughts, and thoughts will lead you to another very important thing, which is the beliefs. Beliefs that we have, the beliefs that will shape our lives. Beliefs are thoughts that are energized. That is to say, thoughts which are energized. There is energy underlying those thoughts. So these thoughts are going to attract people and situations to us, the situations that we have to come across in life. So at this level, it's as if we were living our lives with a kind of map. And in this map, what do we have? There are many certainties, strong thoughts about ourselves, our capacities, life, love, nature. Actually, we have beliefs, whether or not we are aware of these beliefs, about everything. So this map allows us to decode everything that happens in our lives. Not only do we read what happens to us through the map, but this map actually can be used as a filter. We use it as a pair of glasses, and you may have gray glasses or pink glasses, which are much more pleasant to wear, to look at life. It would have been good if I had had a flip chart or something to write on. Oh, right, you have something for me. Right, that's great, thank you. So, this map of the world at the end of the day is composed of what? Well, it contains beliefs, positive beliefs, and you have many of them. Otherwise you wouldn't be here today. But we do also have limiting beliefs, beliefs that I help people get rid of. So this map of the world is full of beliefs, and these beliefs generate emotion. So when you have a strong belief, it actually generates specific emotions. So positive beliefs will allow you to experience joy, enthusiasm, and life energy. This is something pleasant, but limiting beliefs will lead you to experience anger, guilt, and sadness, for example, and this is not something that is very pleasant to experience, right? You need to understand
Bon, je ne sais pas si tout le monde va voir, mais au moins, je vais peut-être reculer un petit peu. Ah, c'est gentil. Bon, rassurez-vous, j'ai pas beaucoup de dessins à faire.
Well, I don't have much to draw anyway, but anyway, and I will give you pictures. So, of course, in your life you see things, you hear things, and we all have different channels. And I like to draw a little bit because sometimes it helps people better understand, especially for those who like to have images. So, let me draw this. This is your map of the world. Good news, we all have our own unique map. And here you have positive beliefs. We all have them. But as I explained, there are also limiting beliefs. And you can be reassured we don't have that many of them. But these beliefs generate emotions. And as I explained, these emotions also are really the sort of our lives. Imagine you don't have emotion. If you don't feel emotion, there's nothing happening. I remember a sci-fi movie which is called Equilibrium. I don't know if some of you have seen it. It's very interesting because after a world war, people have decided to stop feeling emotion. So they take pills so that they won't feel emotion anymore because they believe that emotions led them to destroy their world. So the whole movie is about actually rediscovering these emotions, feeling them again. Emotion is energy in movement, and we all need this. Why do we need them? Well, emotions actually underlie all the actions we take in life. Of course, not when you go to the baker's in the morning, but each time you do something important in your life, it takes energy. So each time you do something important, some part of you afterwards takes stock of the situation. You will think, oh, well, I did this, or I said that, or I shouldn't have said this. Everybody does this. And when you take stock of the situation once again, here, what you do is reconfirm your basic beliefs. So what we're seeing here is that the very essence of human psyche is a permanent reenactment of our beliefs. So this is the way we actually function, our thoughts function. So this is at the basis of our realities. So when you reconfirm something positive, that's great. I remember a client once who told me, you know, I always get away with things. That's great. That's a great and positive belief. That's okay. But when you have a limiting belief, well, then it is quite disabling in life. So let me quote an example for you to better understand how these things reconfirm themselves permanently. Imagine I'm a woman and I have a very positive belief. I believe that we all have something beautiful and good to share. It's like a spark inside us. It's a belief I have. I believe that we all have this divine spark inside us and that we can actually share it. And I do believe that fundamentally human beings are good inside. And so I'm this woman and I'm walking down the street and somebody comes across the street and seems to want to come and ask me something. So what do you think I will feel? What are going to be my emotions when I see this man coming to me? Welcoming. Yes, welcoming. Absolutely, indeed. Curious and welcoming. Okay, what does he want? Actually, he's looking for a specific street. So what I do is look for a map in my bag and then I'll help him out. I help him find his way, and we have a very nice and friendly exchange. And then when he's on his way, I go on my own way, and I think, well, we really have something nice and good to share. And I reconfirm my positive belief. I've experienced something nice and friendly, as you would actually be able to experience any time in life. But imagine I'm another woman now, and imagine that when I was a child, my dad used to beat my mother. So I like my dad, but from a distance. And I have a belief here, the belief that men are dangerous. Imagine I'm this woman walking down the street and I see this man coming to me. What do you think I will feel? Distrust. Yes, distrust actually stems from fear. So when this man comes to me, what do? There are two options. Very often when you have fear, you want to get away, you want to flee. But imagine this is daylight, it's a big street, I'm an adult, I control myself. But I will adopt the second option. That is to say, I am going to become aggressive and I will answer, I have no idea about this, and then I just go on my way. But as I go on my way, you know what I'm thinking here? I'm sure this guy wanted something unkind. And I reconfirm my belief, right? So we permanently reconfirm those beliefs until one day you say no, you say stop. So this map of the world, as you see it here, is your map of the world, and 80% of it is set at 6 years old. That's huge, right? At 6 years old, the main dynamics of success or failure in your life are already set. And then you spend your time reconfirming your own beliefs and re-energizing them, and they toughen up. Angie Vaudin, in one of her books, describes that this really becomes set in stone and animates you from inside, from within, and you lose your freedom in the process. So what should we do? Obviously, we have to act upon these beliefs, and in order to do this, you need to make sure that you act at the time it was implemented, it was generated. 90% of the cases, when you have a belief, it's because you have experienced strong emotion, but nobody was there to explain. Until you turn 1 year, 1.5 years old, when you start speaking, you experience a lot of emotion in the womb, but our parents don't all know about child psyche and psychology, so they are not here to explain. So you are experiencing something, strong emotion, and nobody explains. So you have to try and explain it by yourself, by interpreting it. And this interpretation of the situation is interlinked with the belief, and it's set in stone. So this is how a belief is generated. Emotion plus interpretation. Now, this is your belief. You have generated it, and then it needs to reconfirm itself. So, as I explained, you are going to reenact this belief, and you are going to do it in a more and more powerful way until you turn adult. That means that throughout your life, you are going to experience this belief more and more strongly. Now, you also need to understand here that this emotion, which gave rise to a belief, anchored it in your psyche, solidified it. You are going to experience it again and again. Even though in life sometimes, things are going well and you're fine in between, it's okay. But at one point in time, you are going to experience it again. So what is the main principle in Sophro-analysis of pre-birth, birth and childhood memories? Is to go out and help that child, this inner child inside us, help the child change his belief by giving the child understanding and information he didn't have at the time. So when you interpret a situation, it's one interpretation. There are many different interpretations possible. What does this mean? I remember a client once, and he had just had a fit of panic. He was on a bridge, he was stuck in the traffic, and when he came to me, he was in a panic. And I asked him about what was happening, and he said, well, it's each time I'm on a bridge, and I've had a fit of panic once again. I was in my car, so we started working on this in the session, and he was guided to a situation when he was 3 years old. His inner child, he was on a market with his parents, everything was fine. It was on a bridge, and there was a crowd, and the crowd started moving a lot, and the child was suddenly separated from his parents. 3 years old, and he was very scared of dying. And he started thinking, oh my God, my parents have abandoned me, and I'm going to die. And this is something that he's kept inside him. This was the first fit of panic for him. But it was such a difficult situation. If my parents have abandoned me, then what am I worth? Not much. And this is not something he can bear. So he's going to forget about it. But there's something that remains in him. It's an anchoring. That is to say, each time he was on a bridge, he had a fit of panic. But he had no souvenir of this initial situation. So what we did was go out and explore the thoughts of his parents at the same time. And he saw his parents who were desperately trying to find him, his mother who was feeling so guilty, and he realized that his interpretation at the time was absolutely wrong, and from that point in time on, everything changed for him. He changed his belief and turned it into a positive belief. My mother loves me. She wants to find me. And then he left, and he went on a bridge, and it was okay. He didn't have a fit of panic anymore. So this is what changing a belief is all about. So once again, when you want to change a belief, you have to do it at the time when it was generated. And also, you really need to experience it with your feelings, with your emotions. If somebody was here to explain everything that you have experienced, even if you were able to know about the whole history of the earth, even if you had read all the books, had all the knowledge, it wouldn't help you fulfill yourself more. Why? Because it will only be in your mind. Of course, it's important to understand with your mind, but it's not sufficient, because it just turns around and around and around in circles, and it doesn't change anything. You have to feel it in your belly here, in this area of the aura, which is an energy center. Another thing I would like you to understand is that this child here is anchored in time. When he is in this situation, he has absolutely no knowledge of the future, right? Can't see the future. So inside the adult, the child carries on suffering. And you can see that there is an adult here, and the thing is, and it's good news, is that you don't have so many of these situations where the child suffers. It could be in the womb, it could be at birth, it could be during childhood, but we don't have so many situations in our lives where we have generated limiting beliefs, because we have many reenactments, but we don't care about the reenactments here. What we are interested in is the origin, the very source of the belief, when it was generated. So when the adult helps his inner child, he helps the child with the knowledge of the future. Of course, the child doesn't know about the future, but the adult does, so you can show him the future. But also other information is going to help the child, because of course we are going to work at transpersonal level. I'm sure you all here understand that the spirit is very important. And of course, we want to zoom out and allow ourselves to have a broader picture. So when we accompany the inner child, we do it with our souls. Our souls are there. So you may call it your soul, you may call it your own inner wisdom, your inner being, the self. It's the same thing. It's that part which is full of life and light in us, and who knows our story, who has registered everything, billions and billions of data from the very beginning of our life, and even before. You will have understood this. So all this information that we have create a gigantic volume of information that we would not be able to be aware of all at the same time. So it's all been filed away. And because it's been filed away, a bit like in a computer, well then, the soul, when it is the right time for you, when you have decided that you wanted to put a stop, to put an end to your suffering, when you're fed up, really. Remember in No Solar, when the hero is in the purgatory, and at one point in time he can't take it anymore. You must have experienced this already. You're fed up. It's too much, way too much. And this is the time when you can generate the necessary and sufficient energy to actually let go of this suffering and overcome it. And I can tell you that when you decide to do it, your soul will be there to help you. But you need to decide by yourself. You need to be motivated enough to actually use this energy to put an end to the suffering and become free again. So as you will have understood, our soul opens up the right file for you. And when the soul does this, to allow you to explore the key moments when you have generated a belief, it's always when it's right for you that she does it. And the soul does it only when you have the right resources to manage this. That is to say, you can do it safely. Your soul can only allow you to explore what you could explore safely, right? Now, let's start talking about those important moments when you generate beliefs. And limiting beliefs, we don't have that many of them. Good news. Now, let me explain the two axes that we work on. The first axis is the vertical axis, i.e. your personal life script. And the horizontal axis here is your genealogy. And you will see that there are links between the two axes here. So we first work on the personal axis. Why? Well, because it's more important, because it's about your story, between you and you. This is where you can exert your responsibility. At the horizontal level, it would be too easy to say, if I'm in a bad mood, for example, well, it's because of my grandfather. No, nothing like that. No, you first need to understand what happened in your personal life script, and then you can actually understand why you were born in this family and with this genealogy. Let me quote an example here again, and we are going to talk about the womb life. Imagine the example of an embryo. He's 3 weeks old. So we're in the womb, and at 3 weeks you are already quite developed, right? And so the embryo is waiting, and his mother takes the pregnancy tests. And she says, oh my God, it really is not the right moment. Close your eyes and try and feel the emotion of the embryo when he perceives this. Because of course consciousness is there already. And he can feel and hear his mother say, it's not the right time. And of course it's full of despair, discouragement, and even anger. How will he feel? Well, the child feels rejected and abandoned, yes indeed. At that very point in time, he thinks, Mom doesn't want me, she rejects me, and if she doesn't want me, then what am I worth? Nothing. If this woman, who's supposed to be the person who loves me best in the world, doesn't love me, who's going to love me? No one. So I'm not lovable. That's a lot already. See how suddenly this can happen? The first thing that you put in place is sense of worthlessness. And this is something that's going to echo throughout your life. Year after year, it's going to reenact itself until you turn an adult. And the adult, at one point in time, thinks, I'll never manage. I'm not able. This project, I'm not going to start it because anyway, I don't have the ability to succeed. Even if around me people tell me, my colleagues, my boss for example, tell me, well, you have great qualities, you have capacity, a voice inside me says no. All this is wrong. That's incredible, right? The power of our beliefs, despite the reality. So that's quite limiting. Another limiting belief is lack of self-love. And many of us have this. And there again, it's not easy. But let's say that on top of these beliefs, the embryo is also going to set up a third belief, and I must say that it is the worst of all. You know, I'm 3 weeks old, I'm in the womb. What happens? Well, I love my mother. I do. As someone said before, we fuse together with our mothers. We do. And it's very important for us. But I feel her despair. I feel her sadness. She's discouraged. Being unwanted is something that can happen for many different reasons. If I'm the mother, maybe it's not the right time for me because I had a professional opportunity and I won't be able to move up in my career because of the child. Or maybe I think that I don't have enough money. So there are many reasons for not wanting a child at one point in time. But the embryo inside the womb thinks it's because of me. The child will always feel guilty. And he will think, you know, the first thing I do as I come into the world is hurt my mother. I am guilty. And when you're guilty, what do you deserve? To be punished, right? So this means that from that point in time, at 3 weeks old in the womb, I set up the third belief, the most limiting one of all, that is to say guilt. And guilt is going to generate a number of things. That is to say self-punishment patterns. Self-punishment is a disaster because we are the worst judges for ourselves. So it could be a small punishment, which is already quite limiting. For example, each time I'm about to do something nice and pleasant, each time I'm about to succeed, well, I am going to say something or do something, and then I think, well, why did I do this? And I don't understand. This is what I call a sabotage. You know about this, right? But also, in this whole range of self-punishment, you can find other things which are even more limiting. You can actually switch over to self-destruction, disease, accidents, and even sometimes, and it does exist, people who will want to commit suicide. They will want to die. I've hurt my mother so much that I don't deserve to live. And one day or the other, I will commit suicide. And yesterday, we talked about this with Nicole. We talked about those kids who are born with a cyanose and that we have to reanimate, to revive. Amongst those kids, and I've actually accompanied people who have experienced this, some of them actually just believe that they don't deserve to live and they actually commit suicide. So that's quite a range of self-punishment, right? So we have 3 beliefs here just for that belief of feeling unwanted. And this is going to echo throughout our life. But it's not all, because based on this, you'll have to develop your own strategies. What strategies? 1, to cut yourself away from pain. It's terrible to feel that your mother doesn't love you and that she rejects you. It's unbearable. So the first strategy you implement is cut yourself away from pain. I'm not going to feel pain anymore. That's it. I won't feel emotion anymore. I cut myself away from emotion. And in practical terms, people will only live with their minds. But I won't feel anything anymore. Like, you know, people who have a big head and a small body. One day I had a specific case, it's quite unique, but it was a lady and she came to me. And I started asking her questions about her life. And she told me, you know, my problem is that I don't feel emotion. So I asked her about her life and she said, yes, I'm married and I have 3 kids. And I asked her, do you love them? And you know what she answered? She answered, I know I love them. It's all in our mind. She did her duty, everything she had to do, because she knew that when you have a kid, you have to take care of the kid, you have to feed him and everything. But there was nothing happening in her heart, nothing in her heart for her kids or for her husband. This sphere actually didn't exist at all. So that was quite an extreme case. So you can be more or less cut away from your emotion, and there's one that you find difficult to cut away from is fear. But this woman had no emotion whatsoever. Now, other strategies we have to cut ourselves away from this pain that we can't bear anymore is stop thinking. I'm not going to think about it anymore. Doesn't mean that you're going to turn an idiot. Sometimes you may have the feeling that you're an idiot. I sometimes had the feeling that I was an idiot because sometimes I didn't have access to my capacities anymore. When there was a strong emotion, it was all cut away from me. I just could not have access to my brains anymore. And it's just this mechanism that reactivated itself. So this is the first strategy. The second strategy you need, because you're an embryo, you're in the mother's womb, what do I absolutely need if I want to carry on living? Love, obviously. Yes, indeed. Because you see, at that point in time, where I have the feeling that my mother rejects me, abandons me, according to you, what is the very first thing I would like to do? I am overwhelmed by despair. I want to go away. And we can find it in the sessions that people want to go back where they came from. It's too terrible to bear. They want to go away. But for those of you here who have experienced that kind of situation, you're still here. Which means that sometime, at one point in time, you have hanged on and you can feel it. I remember a client who actually felt at the very point in time where she actually switched over to hanging on. When the cell comes into the uterus, it's a big hole, and the cell actually goes down and has to hang on to the uterine wall. We had to hang on, otherwise we wouldn't be here. And to hang on, well, you have to have quite a powerful life force, and you will feel it. But you also need love. It's not sufficient just to have the life force. So what am I going to do to try and have a bit of love from that mother? Not just to be loved from her, but just for her to pay attention to me, for her to see me a little bit. There's a whole diversity of strategies. It's very interesting. But you may decide, for example, that you are going to be a very nice kid, that you are going to do everything she wants for her to love you. I am going to be a perfect child. Those kids where you say, oh, this one is great, he's nice, he's polite, he does his homework, he goes to school, and he meets every mother's needs. All of his mother's needs, and even his dad's needs. It does, indeed, but what about his needs? He doesn't meet his own needs. He forgets about his own needs. But this will create a lot of frustration for him, and it can explode one day. Some people will decide that they will always, be nice to others, but they don't take care of themselves. This is a lot of pressure that is being put on being then. I may also decide that I will make sure that people see me, that my mother will see me. I become a rebel in the womb. I start kicking. Or I can try and attract a bit of her attention by proving my worth. I'm going to work hard. And I'm going to, reach heights. Some people do that just to prove to their parents that they have some worth. That's a lot, right? So we all have our own strategies. But, as you can see here, this is just one situation. But it gives rise to all these beliefs that are going to reenact themselves throughout life, plus survival strategies. But these strategies, to suffer less and try to be loved, at one point in time will turn against us. Why? For example, if I decide to work hard, I will push myself so much that maybe at one point in time, maybe I will have a heart problem. Or if I decide that I am going to make do on my own, I lead myself to believe that I can do everything on my own. I don't need anyone, not even my mother. Well, indeed, you are going to become autonomous, but at one point in time, you are going to cut yourself away from people. First, because you don't want to ask for help, and you are going to progressively isolate yourself. So it's going to turn against you. So throughout my life, I will reenact the self-punishment strategies that stem from my guilt. Now, let me explain how we can help that child, so that you will understand how we can be reborn. As an adult, what can I tell this child here to allow him to let go of all this? Well, the first thing is I'll ask a question. How do you make a baby? Well, it takes two, right? You've seen this in the movie. It's a couple, a man and a woman who make love. Great. In other words, if these are a man and a woman making love, who's responsible for creating the child? Is it the child or the adults? Your answer is both. Well, actually, yes and no. Because even though you have the belief that you have chosen your own parents, yes, you have indeed, but as a soul, are you able to force your parents to make love? Have you pointed a gun at them saying, well, right now you are going to create my first cell, right now? No, that's not the way it works. The responsibility of creating this first cell is 100% the parents' responsibility. And if you're not the one who comes in the womb, many other souls are waiting. You know, this life on earth is precious. There was a wise man who used to say, you know, if I had a choice between the earth and many other galaxies, I would still choose the earth. Yes, because it's a magical place. It's a great school of fulfillment. Now you will have understood that when the child hears that it's the parent's responsibility if he's here, it's not his fault. It changes everything. He doesn't need to be guilty. He doesn't need his punishment strategies anymore. He can let go of them. This is a metaphor, this chronology of life, but everything happens in the present time. So you are reborn in a way. It's not that you are living through your birth again. It's in the sense of actually finding your own self again because you let go of the old beliefs. This is something that you do sitting in an armchair, relaxing. So all of a sudden, all the energy that was blocked because of your guilt, everything that was knotted inside you is freed instantaneously. So you transform it. And we are going to zoom in a little bit more. Because, of course, we are talking about the creation of life with a sperm and an ovum. These are two animated cells. Remember when you were at school, you must have learned the difference between animated matter and unanimated matter. What is it? The difference is consciousness. Consciousness is there to animate these cells. And it's not just anyone's consciousness, it's your parents' consciousness. And what is this consciousness that will animate the cells? Is it just the thoughts of the parents? Is it the superficial consciousness? Or is it the deep, profound consciousness that is connected to the soul? What do you think? Well, yes, that's the one which is connected with the soul. And I feel that you are not completely certain about this. Some of you aren't anyway. Let me demonstrate this to you. You know, I'm a scientist. I am like Saint Thomas. I've been accompanying people in Sophro-analysis for 12 years now, and everything I'm telling you now is experience, my experience. I used to have many beliefs before, but what I'm telling you now is the result of my research. The research I've conducted thanks to all the people who have accompanied. Now, anyway, this sperm and this ovum have a story. I accompany people who are having difficulties having a baby. Their bodies are fully healthy, they have sperms, they have very nice ovum, and everything is going fine in their bodies, and they make love on a regular basis. And they only have one thought: we want a baby, we want a baby, we want a baby. You know, they both say this, but the baby doesn't come because the soul says no. For the baby to come, the soul of both parents must say yes to the soul of the baby. And there again, it changes everything when the baby realizes this. I remember of having accompanied persons who have actually been the results of a rape. But still, the souls have said yes. This is something that you can feel in your heart, not with your mind. In the same way as you can actually relive the moment when you meet the souls of both your parents. This is something that is like an explosion of joy at cosmic scale. Really, it is fantastic. I'm telling you this, and you're hearing it with your minds, but I invite you to experience it with your heart. And I'll explain why you may have experienced this situation of your mother being raped and becoming pregnant with you, and what is the purpose of living through such situations. But anyway, when you realize that your parents' souls have said yes to you, you can let go of your guilt. You can let go of the fact that you thought that you were not wanted. And then I allow the child to understand something else. When the mother looks at her belly, can she see the baby inside? No, she doesn't have X-ray, right? So, what does this mean? Well, I will ask the baby, do you think that she doesn't want you? Or do you think that she doesn't want a baby, an abstract baby? Well, she doesn't want an abstract baby because she doesn't know me. Right, okay, so it has nothing to do with you. If it was another baby, it would be the same thing? Yes. So what about your value? Well, it is intact. Okay, it changes everything once again. Why? Well, because all this is over. Understand? You don't need this anymore. And all of a sudden, you find your life force again. You can be connected to something that is extremely essential if you want to move forward in life. You can't move forward in life if you don't have a strong link with both your parents. And this is something that you can see in the genealogy. You have two roots, mother and father. And this is really what allows you to feel love inside. Otherwise, you will never have the energy needed to move forward in life. I thought I was cut away from this. I thought I didn't deserve it, that I didn't have any value. But now I realize that I'm a good person, and that if I'm here, it's for a purpose, and we'll explain that later on. Let me tell you about another type of belief, just for you to understand it better. For example, in the womb, of course, in the womb a lot can happen. And of course, the mother is not aware of everything that happens in the womb, even if she takes an X-ray. Sometimes you wonder why the baby moves a lot in the womb. Well, there are many reasons that could explain this behavior in the womb. Now, if I am an embryo and I know I'm a girl, and all of a sudden I can capture in my mother's thoughts or my father's thoughts that they've prepared the room, that they've painted it blue, it's going to be a boy. Great. I remember a woman one day who had this belief that her parents wanted a boy, but she was a girl. And when her mother took the X-ray, they were not able to see the sex. She was hiding it behind her legs. She was already aware. But at the same time, she started believing that she was inadequate, not compliant with what my parents expect. And I feel guilty for it. I'm not the boy they wanted, I'm a girl. Wow. Guilty for being a girl. Once again, guilt really is something that we can find everywhere. But there are other beliefs and strategies. One of the strategies, for example, in that situation, well, I'll become the boy they wanted to have. And I'll forget about my feminine energy. In the womb, another example would be, imagine you come into the womb and before you there was another baby and your mother's bought it. And the womb is marked by the abortion. So the womb is dangerous. Even more if my mother thinks about abortion. What happens then? You're the embryo, you come into that womb and you are absolutely terrified. And this is going to generate a lot of fears for the adults later on. And how do you react? Well, you are going to become hypervigilant. You know those people who can't go to sleep? Or those people who are hyperactive as well? It's one of the causes of hyperactivity, indeed. If at one point in time I think that if I stop being vigilant, well, she can try and kill me at any time, well, of course, this generates a lot of anguish. I have to always be vigilant. But the reality is that she is not going to abort. I carry on living. I mean, if the adult can tell the embryo, look at what happens in the future, you are going to live. Relief. Another very important situation that can happen, and this is something that has been discovered in France by Claude Imbert, it's the lost twin syndrome. She wrote a book. At the time, she had established that 20% of pregnancies are twin pregnancies, and the twin often actually dies at 3 weeks on average. Sometimes a bit more, but on average it's 3 weeks. So what happens is terrible, because of course you are in the womb with the twin and you fuse together with your twin. It's absolutely extraordinary. It's not just about fusing together. Sometimes there is also rivalry in the womb, because of course the other one is there on your territory. And of course this stage of development is a stage where you are developing your reptilian brains, and the notion of territory and food is absolutely essential. So there's someone with me in the womb, but maybe there's not enough space for two. So it could be a fantastic love story between you and your twin, and you live it from soul to soul. You experience it not with your body at this stage of development, but with your souls. It's a kind of telepathy. And what happens when the other twin dies? Well, you are left with your own despair and sadness. And what you are going to decide to do very often is try and find the twin again, or try and relieve the same quality of love. But of course it will be difficult. It will be difficult because it's difficult to do this only with your soul. You are going to try and do it with your body, so it's very difficult to find such a correspondence. Now, if you look at the beliefs that you develop, if I loved my twin and he's left, each time I find somebody I can love, I will be terrified of suffering again. And so I will sabotage myself there again. Even before we reach a stage in the relationship where we feel good together, I'll make sure that I'll say or do something that's going to break up the relationship. I will suffer from that, but I'm afraid of suffering even more if I allow myself to love that person. So see what can happen? Guilt in that situation happens as well. You know, the other one is left. Why did I have to stay? Survivor's guilt. And then I have to prove that if I was the one who stayed, it's because I had more aptitude to live, that I was more worth living. So I will have to always prove over and over again that, you know, I have this worth, I am worth living. But you will never be satisfied. Okay, so obviously the most important thing here is to make sure that you explore the situation at the source of the limiting belief. Of course, the source can be in the womb, as I've demonstrated up to now, but also at birth. It can be during childhood as well. Because indeed there are times during childhood where you experience things and nobody can explain. You do experience traumas. Imagine a little girl or even a little boy who has been raped. Of course, it's an extreme trauma. And as he experiences this trauma, well, of course he will feel shame, won't love himself or herself, and so forth and so on. So you will have guilt and shame and lack of self-love. And of course this is something that we'll have to restructure. We'll change the interpretation of the situation. Is it because of you that you've been raped? Of course not. You're a child. So what we do is explore the source of these beliefs. And how do we do that? With our source. It's the soul that shows you what has happened. And sometimes the source is in past lives. So you go out and open up that file, and you will find those lives where you have suffered a lot, but also caused suffering. And this really still echoes a lot in us. So we have caused suffering, and we have suffered a lot in past lives as well. Now, this is where we come at the crossroads. At that point in time in our history, where we decide to be born again, before incarnation. Some people will tell you it's not fair. What I live through today is not fair, and I didn't ask to be born. How many times have you heard this? Well, when you explore what happened before incarnation, you will find a number of things. We will all find that actually we said yes. Yes to incarnation. We decided to come to Earth. But we forgot about it. There are different levels. There's quite a high level where our souls say yes. And there are reasons for that. What are the reasons for saying yes to incarnation? Life is a perpetual movement. We move forward on a permanent basis. There is a continuous movement of expansion of life. But sometimes we come across obstacles, walls, thick walls. We have all had these situations where we have come across obstacles. So these walls are our difficulties in life. And so when we are blocked by a wall, we have to do something. It's not possible for you to stay behind a wall in life. So either you break it, you jump above it, you are going to try and turn around it, whatever. But it's not possible for you to stay static in front of the wall. So you have to do something, which means that you will be forced to develop a number of resources, specific resources, that your soul needs to develop. We all come with our own suitcases. In my suitcase, for example, I have autonomy, but I don't have self-love. And you, what do you have in your suitcase? Oh, you have organization, but you don't have self-love either. Oh, interesting. That's what I'm trying to develop when I come to the earth. And I will have to do it because of the obstacles. If you didn't have any obstacles, well, you would not make the effort of trying to develop anything. I mean, if you're on a beach and you can listen to the birds singing and the water, well, you will not make any effort to evolve. Why would I bother, But if I come across an obstacle, I really have to do something about it, so I'll do. We are indeed very lazy people. Anyway, so you have to find some way to make sure that you will evolve, that you will develop these resources. That's the whole purpose of life. If we have experienced these difficulties in past lives, but also in childhood, it's because we need this to develop our own resources. I remember one of my clients one day, she had a picture of her soul, and it presented itself as a disco ball. And these sparkling disco balls that you have in discos, it was very nice. It was full of light, and she saw that her disco ball was full of light, except for some of the facets that were dark. And she told me, well, this is what I haven't developed yet. Interesting, right? So these are the resources that we come to develop. That's the whole purpose. One day, a client came to me. She was a company manager. She was very successful as a company manager. She had a great team. She was a great manager, and she was very proud of it. But she came to me because she didn't have a partner in life. She was 42 years old, and she wanted to have a child, so it was running late for her. So this woman, when she was a child, she was 7 years old, and her mother told her, now this is the fourth child, and you are going to take care of your brothers and sisters and your father as well. So at 7 years old, she lost her life as a child. And this is why she came to me. Because of this, she had to develop, a sense of autonomy and organization, sense of responsibility, being able to cope. but she was still suffering for it.
Aujourd'hui, ça faisait sa fierté.
Of course, the resources she had to develop she was very proud of, because this is what allowed her to be successful professionally. But she had to revisit that moment and accept things. And one day she came to me and she said, you know, Christine, if I had to do it all over again, I would. Because these resources are very important for her. Same thing for me. I mean, what I've lived allowed me to become a therapist, and if I had to go through all this again, I would. You all are unique beings with your own unique fulfillment potential, and this is what we're talking about here. With Sophro-analysis, you give yourself the opportunity to fulfill yourselves and contribute your own unique capacities to the world. Now, when we explore what has happened before incarnation, what we see is our parents. We will decide to be born in a specific family. Why do we choose those two individuals amongst the billions of individuals available on the planet? Well, you have to raise a question here. Now you have understood that we have to develop these resources. We have to go through these obstacles if we want to develop these resources. So what is a prerequisite to develop these resources? Imagine that what I need to learn is courage. What do I need if I want to learn courage? What is the prerequisite? Fear. Fear. Because if you don't go through fear, you will never learn your courage. You will never develop your own courage. You can call it whatever you want. To learn to develop your courage, you have to learn to overcome fear. So you have to experience it. So what happens is that the parents I'm going to choose, and this is something I invite you to do, you can think about your parents and their limits, the limits that they have offered you. What did it force you to develop? What qualities, competencies, talents, and resources, knowledge did you have to develop because of their limits? And this will give you part of the purpose of your life. This is why you choose your parents. You can actually explore this time when you choose your parents, where you connect to them with this extraordinary love. It's like a trio. It's very beautiful. It's an extraordinary energy of unconditional love. But at the same time, you will see that, being together will allow you to evolve all together. These are stories of souls. You will be in contact again with people you've been in contact with in past lives. Remember in that movie that we saw yesterday, there was a couple and they were in love, but they had been together for several lives and they were not able to love each other in matter. It was a bit discouraging. For example, they had different tastes and they found it difficult to love each other, really. Fusing together is beautiful, like twins. But imagine, what is it all about, fusing together? It's like, he has the same ideas as me, he thinks like me, and we have the same tastes. We're alike. So in front of you, what do you have? Another me, myself, my alter ego. This is primary archaic love. But what we need to learn is an inclusive love energy. A family is a big system. A system which has laws. Laws underlying the system are such that everyone has a place in the system. And all places are equally important. My grandfather is not more important than me. And the second thing is that the system hates it if somebody loses its place. What does it mean? If somebody was ejected from the system for whatever reason, an abortion, a woman who dies giving birth, somebody rejected from a specific community, well, those people, amongst our ancestors who have lost their place in the system will give them their place again through who? Through us, through your kids as well, because it's not bearable for the system. So that person will be given a place by the system through you. So you end up having symptoms, diseases, destinies, emotions that are not yours, but those of your ancestors. Why? Because you try to allow them to find their place again, unconsciously, obviously. And why? Well, there's always a link. You know, if you're in your own personal life script, you have an important sense of worthlessness. Automatically, the person you will be interlinked with in your family is someone who also has the same sense of worthlessness. Somebody who has experienced failure, inability. You know, it's very funny. Our souls have a lot of humor. And it's just that, you know, the soul will tell you, you know, in your personal life script, you have made sure that you would feel this sense of worthlessness so that you can actually start loving yourself again. But to make sure that you do go through this sense of worthlessness, well, you will be linked to a family who will further develop this sense for you. So you have to do two things. You have to work on your own personal life cycle, but also you have to do some work around your genealogy with family constellations, for example, because of course you're going to free yourself from those stories. You know, what you do for the genealogy is easy compared to what you do for your personal life script. But anyway, what you do when you do this is allow yourself to free yourself from those problems, but also your ancestors and your kids. It's as if you created an immense column of life and light, and it's magnificent. It's a unique and sacred type of work. And it is something that you have to do, because this allows you to take an essential step forward. And it is the whole purpose of life. We all live with chains around us. If you look at a chain, it's rigid, it's heavy, and it gets you stuck. So we fuse together with beings, with things, and this is very heavy. We are not free when we have a chain. I mean, if you want to move forward, somebody has to follow. And sometimes you get stuck. So when you do this work to release all these chains, well, you are going to transform this chain into a very beautiful link of love that leaves everyone free in the system. So that's the work that you need to do, transform these chains into beautiful links of love. That's the whole purpose of doing this. Right, I'm sure I've been talking for too long. I've forgotten half of the things I wanted to tell you, but I do hope you will have understood the essence of what I wanted to pass on to you. And now you can ask your questions. We talk about pacts between parents and the children for birth, but what about previous generations? Can they have an impact? It's a good question. In the case of, well, there's one example I would like to quote because it's an interesting one. I've helped a couple who was finding it difficult to have a child, and I worked with both of them. And what happened was that in the life of the man in the couple, well, his birth was a disaster. His mother was sick for months and months, and she had big difficulties during pregnancy. And he was feeling extremely guilty for hurting his mother. So he helped his own inner child and let go of his guilt. If there is a difficult birth, is it because of the child? Obviously not. But this is what he thought, that he believed. Now the lady, she started working on her own life script as well. And first of all, she found that she had believed she was not wanted by her parents, but that was not sufficient. So she did another session, and in that session, she explored a situation that was a situation in a past life, maybe in the Middle Ages. It was quite a poor environment, and there was a young girl, she was 13 years old, and she was looking at a child that was screaming and screaming and screaming in his bed. You know what it's like when a baby screams. It can get you crazy. And this young girl, it was her baby. And my client saw this girl actually kill the baby. So she was a very young girl, and she was one of my client's ancestors. And all I know is that she has united with this ancestor and the soul of the baby with a lot of love. And this love was lacking. There was a guilt that was still in the system. This really is all about genealogy here. So this guilt was in the system, and she was bearing it for the ancestor. But you know, at one point in time, you can be confused between genealogy and past lives, and maybe it could have been her, this ancestor. Some families would tell you, you know, we are cursed until the 7th generation, but maybe you were at the origin in a past life of this curse. Anyway, the couple managed to have a child 2 months afterwards. So, at one point in time, people will feel things. They will perceive things thanks to their soul. This woman actually felt the very strong love that circulated between herself and her parents. But she had to work on the 2 axes before she was able to give life. And of course, she could not give life without having let go of this guilt. So to try to have a baby, of course, you need to understand that there are no such things as perfect parents. Many parents actually feel guilty. Women and mothers feel guilty because, you know, 10 years after they think, you know, I shouldn't have done this. Oh my God, I didn't do this and that. No, absolutely not. You did everything you could with your consciousness at the time. Another question. Yes, I would like to say something. I am a physicist and a doctor, and I really liked it when you talked about quantum physics. I do work a lot on quantum physics and on water. And somebody a long time ago said about water that matter is only an illusion. All that exists is vibration, and everything is vibration in life. And it was Albert Einstein. Thank you so much. Next question. What about diseases and physical malformation in kids? Can it result from one of those beliefs in the womb? The answer. I remember having accompanied a woman who came with her baby. He was 2 months old and he had a kidney malformation. Claude Humbert had sent her to me because she was going. The baby was going to go through surgery, and well, she came with the baby, and well, you know, he had kind of a blank gaze, and you know, she had her baby in her arms, and I started asking questions to the mother about her pregnancy with this baby, and she told me, well, at 3 weeks I lost blood, and I went to my doctor, and he said everything was all right. Okay, but when she said that, the baby reacted, and I thought, oh, there's something happening here. And I also felt around me something that was manifesting itself, something, I can't really tell you, something pink around us. So I asked the mother, what if you had had another baby, a baby girl with him? And the mother answered, oh, is that why I was thinking about everything in pink? And then the baby opened up both of his eyes. And I told the mother, now tell him indeed you had a sister with you in the womb, and I had forgotten about her. And I'm very happy because thanks to you, I know it now. And the baby was very much focused on his mother, was looking at his mother straight in the eyes. And then he relaxed, and when she stopped talking, she was crying, and the baby went to sleep peacefully, like any baby. And then when she went to take a test before surgery, they had to x-ray him before surgery would happen, but then there was no longer any malformation, and he didn't need surgery anymore. So we can help kids as well, indeed. Thank you for having asked this question. So next question about suicidal children. How can we justify the fact that some kids want to commit suicide? I remember a little girl who committed suicide, and her mother had cancer. And her mother had told her, yes, I am going to die, but don't worry, life goes on after death, and we become angels. So there's no problem. But the little girl committed suicide, and she left a note saying, like that, Mummy, I will become an angel so that I can welcome you. So, this is the magic thought of kids. There are many reasons why a kid can want to commit suicide. Sometimes they feel guilty and the parents cannot perceive it. And another situation is that of anorexia. Sometimes children want to commit suicide because of a guilt that they bear for us. I remember a young person. She had a father who had lost his sister. He was 6 and she was 4 years old when she died. And he never forgot about his sister. And he was always sick. And his child had decided that she wanted to die instead of her father. So, there can be many reasons explaining why, at one point in time, a kid may want to commit suicide. So, in that situation, we worked with that girl and we allowed her to, stop feeling guilty. But it is very important to allow people to let go of their guilt. Next question, what about the missions that we can actually come to accomplish on Earth? As a child, sometimes I can decide on a number of things. I can decide to come to the Earth to do something for myself, to develop my own resources, but also to contribute something to mankind. So there are two types of missions. One mission, which is a personal mission. I will learn to develop self-love, for example, or the sense of organization, solidarity. But at the same time, I am going to contribute something to the world. This is the top of Maslow's pyramid here. So I am going to contribute something to the world. I am going to contribute my own light, this little light of mine, to the world. So all the things I'm telling you now is something I've experienced, I've heard in the dialogues between my clients and their souls. So, the work in Sophro-analysis is really something that allows people to freely decide on their lives. And each time they are in contact with their only guru, that is to say, their souls. And this is what allows them to actually decide freely for themselves. The soul and sophrology, what can be their roles and consequences? The soul, as I said, accompanies you, allows you to explore exactly what is right for you to explore when you have the right resources for that. Sometimes you don't have the resources to explore such or such a problem. For example, if you feel very guilty, your soul is first going to allow you to explore a reenactment of that guilt when it echoes again in your life. For example, at 3 years old, but it's not the source of the belief. But maybe the client is not ready to go at the source. So you have to first become aware of one of the echoes, and your soul is going to take you through the right steps for you. And it will always help you. So as I always said, maybe you can come for one session, it's okay, but it's not, it's not very revealing. It helps you a little bit. After 2 or 3 sessions, well then, you can find something very powerful and you let go of it. And the good news is when you do it, it happens securely, when you have the right resources to manage it, when you're ready. And so it's very soft and nice for you. And in Sophro-analysis, we actually accompany people. We don't guide them because the soul guides them, but we help them, we accompany them. So, for example, there was a question before about turn breech birth. When the child turns his back to the world, it can be because they feel unwanted, but also some of them are terrified of coming into the world. They don't want to see the world. And what does this mean? Well, it means that indeed, as you said, we, in the womb, are going to relive everything that we have not been able to digest from our past lives. So, of course, the soul creates a digest cocktail for us. I mean, everything that you'll have to go through is something that you have the right resources for, because you cannot light up the whole disco ball in one go. So you will choose a few facets that you will light up. Sometimes you can see that you can be guided and helped by angels or whatever. But we are always the ones who decide. Nobody can push us. We are the ones to decide. And so when you are born, indeed, you are going to experience again what has happened before incarnation, but also some people will have a fear. For example, the fear of that man I accompanied was he was terrified of finding his father again. Why? Well, it was quite simple. In a past life, well, he had killed his father savagely, right? So he was terrified of meeting him again, terrified of his father wanting a vengeance against him, take revenge. But when he established a dialogue with his father, they realized that they had decided to come together in this life to start loving each other, opening up their own hearts to each other, changing sex, man or woman. So the person you're talking about, if he's not happy being a man, and if that person wants to have a different sex, he will have to do something about it. And his motivation in trying to help himself will allow him to get free and to let go of the limiting beliefs. So if he's a man, he decided to come as a boy, but he has a preference for the other sex, and this led him to develop a number of resources, for example, sensitivity, opening up his heart and things like that. A better of understanding also maybe of yin and yang polarities. So, in other words, if that person wants to change something to his feelings, he will do this work. If the only motivation is in changing sex, well, that person will change sex, but he will never evolve from that perspective. And we don't care about what people think about it. It's not that man's story. What's important is for you and your story. Are you okay with your story? Do you accept your life? Are you ready to think, I have a specific destiny and I want to fulfill it? This is your own free will. Now, if you are fed up with your life and fed up with what you live in life, well, then you roll up your sleeve and you start changing things on your own. That's all I can tell you. And here I don't want to talk about, the debate around homosexuality. Of course, in past lives, you will find many answers to everything that you are experiencing in your life.